Oh, oh wait. Okay, so I think it started. Welcome to the Denver Bitcoin Center. We're talking to Micah Winkelspecht, who just there he
Hey
is, he's
guys.
back up. About Gem tonight, right?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about Gem. I'm going to talk about security and a few other topics.
Awesome. Well, let's get started. Where do you wanna start first?
Yeah, I have a little deck here that I gave this presentation at DevCore Boston this week. Maybe I'll share it with you guys as well.
Was it recorded?
It was live streamed. I don't know if it was recorded for download.
All right. Well, we'll see if we can put that in the information later. But yeah,
Sure.
Great. Awesome. Well, I am excited to see what you have to say. So
Yeah, sure.
hopefully able to make it.
Yeah, sure. So I'll go ahead and get started here. Sorry, I hear a little bit of feedback. You guys have a mute on your side?
Yeah.
Great. So, essentially what Gem's building is the universal wallet for blockchain developers. So we basically are taking all the hard bits of security and essentially making it available to all developers with just a few lines of code. So we're really trying to make this the simplest way to get up and running building blockchain apps. I'm the founder. I'm going to just give you a little bit of background on myself. There we go. Oops. So I've been a developer for the last 10 years. Worked for startups, bigger companies, basically building products. I'm a Ruby developer by trade. I wrote a library called Money Tree. This was actually my first introduction to Bitcoin. I wanted to figure out how to plug myself into the community. So I wrote an implementation of hierarchical deterministic wallets, so BIP32. It's called Money Tree. And that library is now being used by Coinbase, GoCoin, some other guys. And like I said, Ruby is my favorite language, but I also do a lot of JavaScript and played around with Haskell, but I would not say I'm an expert. And then a little bit of background on the company. So I started the company back in January of 2014. Sorry, guys.
Everything good?
Just I'm hearing myself in reverb.
All right.
Apologies about that. Hey, Micah. Unfortunately, your keynote is not showing up as you're flipping through the slides, so it looks like you may have to keep it in that view for this broadcast.
No worries. It's working out perfectly. Sorry, it's just recorded. I'm hearing myself talk about a minute later.
Yeah.
Can you just mute your computer?
I'm gonna leave the call and come back in.
All right.
Apparently, we're having some technical difficulties, everybody, which is we do have one viewer.
Doesn't he really need headphones and a microphone to be able to do this correctly?
Yeah. You'd think they'd be able to. These big Bitcoin companies,
We have one viewer.
You can get those for like 50 cents for China.
Sorry, guys.
No problem. Is it better?
Can you force it to?
This is not out. No, sorry, guys.
No problem.
It's literally just 30 seconds ago.
Force it to his thing.
You know what?
Can you hear me, guys? You guys are on mute.
Yeah, we can hear.
Yeah, so much better.
Nice. All right.
All right, sorry guys.
Hey.
I was literally hearing it over and over and over.
Oh, damn. All right. Well, why don't you go back to your keynote wherever you were at? If you want to check out just a little bit. But yeah, let's. Unfortunately, I don't know why it blanks out all your keynote. So.
Yeah, no worries. So basically, the company started back in February of 2014. Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Thanks. And so we launched at TechCrunch Disrupt, which was really cool, by the way. Very exciting, being up on stage and talking about Bitcoin. Actually, we were the first company that ever launched at TechCrunch Disrupt. We're about 11 employees now, and we're based here in Venice, California. So we've got great weather, which I'm sure you guys wish you had right now. So I won't make you jealous, but it was like 85 degrees today. What Gem is really building is a universal wallet platform for building blockchain apps. So essentially, you can take our wallet and you've got a full multi-signature hierarchical deterministic wallet out of the box. You can plug it into any app and get up and running in just a few lines of code. We really focus on 3 main areas. So simplicity, security, and scalability. So simple meaning just a few lines of code to get running. Security, we're doing things that really I don't think anybody in the industry is doing in terms of security, and I'm going to talk mostly about that today. And then the scalability. If you're going to build on top of somebody else's platform, then you want to make sure that there's high availability, that the platform is always there for you, and it can scale as you grow as well. And so essentially, like what we really focus on is securing all types of digital assets without the need for trust. And I'll go further into that as well. So the team is made up of myself and 11 others, or 10 others, and we brought on our COO, who actually came from PayPal. He was one of the first employees at PayPal, I think employee number 22. So he's got about 10 years of experience in the payments business. He was the vice president of risk management there, so he built all their fraud detection systems. So the talk that I gave at DevCore was called Multi-Sig Meets Hardware, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Banking Industry. Or rather, just learn from the banking industry, because I don't love the banking industry. But I always start by saying, well, what is the blockchain, first of all? And everybody has their own definition of what the blockchain is. I'm going to give you mine. So my definition of the blockchain is that it's the operating system for distributed applications. Right? So whenever you take a system that is centrally controlled and you take the power out of that central control and you push it to those edge nodes in the way that we're doing, when you're distributing that power, what you're really doing is you're massively disrupting those industries. You're disintermediating an entire industry by creating these systems. And so there are applications for the blockchain well beyond finance. I mean, certainly finance is a huge portion of this, but everything from the Internet of Things to the shared economy, remittance payments, identity, digital rights. So there's a ton of applications of this technology. And I thought the most interesting thing that I saw in the last month was actually IBM when they unleashed Adept at CES, which is basically a platform for the Internet of Things devices to basically communicate with each other autonomously and to participate with each other autonomously. So if you really think about what a blockchain is doing, it's really just allowing for different entities that don't necessarily trust each other to interact with each other and transact with each other. But a transaction does not need to be a financial transaction. It can be really any sort of exchange of value. So my mobile phone unlocking my front door is a transaction between my mobile phone and the front door lock. And that can now be essentially placed on a blockchain, and those devices don't need to know each other or trust each other. So we talk a lot about all the different applications of Bitcoin and the blockchain, but how do we actually make it happen? How do we get there? And so our position is that the only way to really explode this technology and get all these beautiful use cases is to actually recruit developers into the space, right? And there's certainly a lot of developers, maybe some of you guys are developers as well, but there's certainly a lot of developers in the space already, really focusing on the core functionality of Bitcoin. But if we really want to explode this technology, we need to actually get the developers who are not in our industry, who are working for big companies or enterprises, to start utilizing the blockchain to solve business problems in their verticals. And we're doing a decent job of recruiting developers. So right now there's about 24,000 projects that are listed on GitHub that mention Bitcoin, which is about a 5x increase in the last year. And I think it's a 20x increase in the last 18 months. So there's a huge growth curve of developers entering the space. But a lot of those projects have been really focused on core technology, and now we need to start seeing those applications being built. And there's really, in my opinion, there's one fundamental truth or one sort of stumbling block for why these developers haven't entered this space, and it's because they don't have the proper tool sets to really get up and running quickly. If you've ever built anything in Bitcoin, when I first started this, there was a 6-month learning curve, and I've been a developer for 10 years, but it took me 6 months just to understand the protocol and how to use it effectively. So we need to be able to lessen that curve. And there's one thing that every developer needs when they get started in this space, and that's a wallet. So for me, the most important tool in the toolbox is that wallet. And if we can make secure wallets available to developers, we can have a lot more different applications being built very quickly. So the problem is that right now, everybody needs a wallet, but what companies are doing essentially is basically building their wallet from scratch. They're reinventing the wheel every time, and we're seeing disastrous results with that. Even just this week, there were 3 different hacks that happened in the last 24 hours, 3 different companies. Obviously Mt. Gox was a huge collapse that everybody recognized and saw as a huge problem, and they lost hundreds of millions of dollars. But everybody just sort of attributed that to real immaturity, bad systems. The site wasn't designed for Bitcoin; it was designed for trading Magic the Gathering online, cards. But now, just recently, when Bitstamp got hacked, everybody sort of perked up because Bitstamp was actually a fairly well-respected company, and when they got hacked, everybody in the industry sort of realized that they could easily just as easily be hacked. And the first thing that they did was the right thing, which is that they switched to multi-signature wallets, and I'll go into further detail on that. But just to give you guys an idea, like how bad this problem is, roughly 10% of all Bitcoins that have ever existed have been lost or stolen due to poor wallet security. 10%, right? So this is not a sustainable solution. That's about $350 million in lost value for poor wallet security. And you can imagine if these developers start entering the space in large numbers, that number is going to get a lot bigger. So the good news is that there's actually already solutions that are out there, right? So the first one is multi-signature. And how many of you guys are familiar with multi-signature? I don't want to waste too much time, right? Right. So so basically, really quickly, the main premise of multi-signature, you can think of the analogy of a missile silo, right? You've got one guy with one key, and you've got another guy with another key, and they both have to turn the keys at the same time in order to launch a missile. So multi-signature allows us to take that same sort of level of security, separating out the entities, and build that into the money itself, which is really cool, and that's something that we've never been able to do with money before. Actually, since Bitstamp got hacked, multi-sig's been being rapidly adopted. So there's about, just a couple months ago, we were around 15,000 transactions per month that were multi-sig transactions. We're now over 90,000, and we were at almost 0 penetration in terms of how many Bitcoins were protected by multi-sig. Now we're about 8%. So there's been pretty much an exponential leap in just the last few months of multi-sig adoption, which is really great. But we're still only at 8% penetration. So I think this year you're going to see it go from 8% to 90%. But multi-sig is only part of the problem. So multi-sig by itself is not a solution, because even if we have 2 separate keys, if I'm just signing every transaction blindly, you're not really getting much of a security boost there. So what we add in is something we call rules enforcement. So essentially, rules enforcement is what we can do is we can actually add a second layer in that will prevent us from signing a transaction. And so you can think of things like anything a bank can provide to security money. So multi-factor authentication, spending limits, velocity controls, fraud detection, anti-money laundering checks, and know your customer stuff. Anything that a bank does to protect money, we can actually now add those layers into our processes when we're processing Bitcoin. But the difference is that in order for the bank to basically provide those features to you, they have to have full possession and control of all your funds all the time. And with multi-signature, we can actually provide the same feature sets as a bank, but without actually taking possession or control of funds. And that's a huge, huge shift in the way we think about solving these problems. And I actually was just recently, a couple days ago, at a Foreign Affairs Council event in New York. I've never been to a Bitcoin event where there were more people wearing suits, but there were essentially, the top banks, the bankers from all the top banks were there. FinCEN, the director of FinCEN was there. The New York Federal Reserve Bank was there. Everybody was there, and there's a huge knowledge gap right now between what they understand about Bitcoin and what Bitcoin can do, like doing multi-sig and essentially eliminating a lot of the risk that's currently built into the current financial system. So this is going to have very, very massive effect on the banking system, and they're starting to take notice. And then there's another component here. So, about 8 months ago, let me back up a second, right? So, the key security principle in multisig is that we have to actually protect the private keys, right? In Bitcoin, we have to protect private keys, and more often than not, what you're seeing with these big hacks is that the keys are getting compromised by some hot wallet, So basically, the solution right now is that everybody says, well, let's take 95% of our coins and take them totally offline, bury them underground, and we'll keep 5% of our coins online for daily transactions, right? Well, we've essentially taken the most fluid, amazing digital form of money, and we've taken it completely offline in a non-digital form, storing it on pieces of paper in a vault. That doesn't make any sense, right? And so what we really want to do is we want to solve the online wallet problem. We want to be able to have wallets online and move money very fluidly in a global financial system. So storing private keys is not a problem that's unique to the Bitcoin industry. So about 8 months ago, I was trying to figure out, there's all these companies, banks do this all the time, the PKI industry and the internet, the SSL certificate industry. They all have this exact same problem, which is how do we store private keys securely? And so I started doing some research and trying to figure out what solutions they already use. Well, it turns out actually that the problem is pretty simple, or the solution is pretty simple. They use hardware devices, very specific hardware devices that go into data centers. And these things are very expensive. They're probably about $20,000 per device, but they're essentially enterprise-grade network-connected devices that go into data centers, and they're FIPS Level 3 certified, which means that even if I had physical access to the machine itself, if I wanted to go and try and steal the secrets out of the machine would actually self-destruct if I tampered with it. So it's very much like Mission Impossible kind of devices. And the entire banking industry uses this. Visa, MasterCard, American Express, now Apple Pay is entirely secured by this. So we essentially tried to go and buy these devices, but the problem was none of these devices actually speak Bitcoin. They don't even support the basic SecP 256K1 curve that Bitcoin uses for signing transactions, and they certainly can't do some of the more advanced features of Bitcoin like hierarchical deterministic wallets. So we actually went and partnered with the largest manufacturer of these devices, a company called Thales. It's an $11 billion company that does defense spending or defense contracting and a lot of other things, avionics. But they have a very specific department that basically secures pretty much the world's financial transactions. And we created a hardware security module that now speaks Bitcoin and can do everything from key generation to hierarchical deterministic wallets to Bitcoin signatures, all within the walls of this protected device that is tamper-proof. And so we really believe that this is going to be sort of the future of security in Bitcoin and can actually solve the security problem. And so we're excited about that. And but there's also a lot of other hardware stuff that's going on that I think is really interesting. So you guys are probably all familiar with the Trezor hardware wallet. So we're basically taking all these things that were stored in software before, and we're now pushing it out to the edges to actual hardware devices, keeping the keys stored in hardware. And I think this is going to have a very massive effect on the security of Bitcoin this year. So I would look out for that, the addition of hardware solutions. And there's Trezor, there's Ledger, and one of the ones I'm most interested in is actually called the Case Wallet by a company called Crypto Labs, which actually communicates, rather than over USB, it communicates over mobile GSM networks, your mobile phone networks, so that you can have wireless connectivity with a wallet, a hardware wallet that you can take to the store and actually transact your entire so yeah, I mean, I guess that's the general talk that I was going to get, which is just that there's been a sort of a logical progression in the Bitcoin industry from these sort of rudimentary systems where everything was stored in software. It was very insecure, and that's really plagued us for the last couple of years. But we're now starting to see the development of really good, sound security solutions that are going to actually take us above and beyond what the financial industry is doing to secure money. And that's multi-signature and hardware together. So yeah, you know, I don't really have much more prepared, but I'd be happy to sort of talk about really anything of interest if you guys have any questions.
Yeah, what was that third hardware wallet you were talking about? I haven't heard of them yet.
Case Wallet, yeah. So it's a company called Crypto Labs, and it's super user-friendly, which I think is what's really sorely lacking in the hardware wallet. Communicates, it's basically got a keypad on the front and an LCD screen, and all of the communication happens over a private channel on a mobile GSM network. So you don't have to plug it in. It works in, I think, 197 countries over the Google GSM mobile networks. And I think it's going to be a really cool thing to carry around. So I'm very excited about that. And it also supports multi-signature. So only one signature has to happen on the device. The other signature has to happen on the server side as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't actually seen that one yet. That sounds really cool. I've been using the Ledger wallet for a couple months now.
How do you like it?
I like it. Their Chrome app works really well. Some people don't like the fact that it's in Chrome, but it certainly makes it really easy to access on all kinds of devices and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I like those devices too. I think that the biggest barrier for me is that wallet really appeals to the hardcore Bitcoiner, right? The guy who wants an extreme security solution and is going to plug this into their device before they ever spend, or they're going to plug it into their computer.
Right.
If we really want to go, we've got to start building stuff that mainstream users comprehend. And so I don't think USB is the right solution. I think that people want to have a wireless device that they can carry with them.
Yeah, for sure. It has to be NFC or, like you said, GSM. Or there's a couple different secure ways to do it. I'm really excited.
Yeah.
Instead, it's becoming more as more people get in the market, I guess.
Yeah. There's also some more there's another company called So maybe a lot of people don't know this, but you know, basically every mobile phone that's coming out into the market now has a chip that's being put inside of it, which is called essentially a TPM chip, or a trusted, or what is it? I don't know. There's different acronyms that they use for it, but essentially it's a trusted module that performs all the cryptographic signing functions, all that stuff inside of this secured environment, very similar to the HSMs that we're putting into our data centers, but on a very micro scale. So these are not like high-performance chips or anything like that. But essentially, these are going into all types of mobile phones, and they're very quickly becoming the root security of all cryptographic functions inside of mobile phones. Rivets is actually working on an API that essentially makes it really easy for developers to plug into these chip modules on all different types of phones, and basically unify that process And so you can now build essentially a mobile wallet on an iPhone or excuse me, like on an Android phone, where the actual signing operations, the key generation, all that stuff is all happening inside of a protected module. And so we're starting to see the emergence of really secure mobile solutions for storing keys. And you know, what's really cool about, or what I get excited about with Bitcoin is that, you know, Bitcoin for me, or Bitcoin the currency for me, is really just the first thing. It's the first step. But what these technologies are all doing is they're actually leading towards something much, much bigger and broader, which in my opinion is generalized authentication and authorization. So if you really think about what a Bitcoin wallet is doing, it's essentially authenticating a person and then authorizing a payment. But why does it only have to be payments, right? Why can't it be how you log into every website on the internet? So now you can have either a security device that you carry with you that represents you, or using the trusted chip inside of your mobile phone, and that can become sort of your root identity as you interact with the world. And you can log into sites using this, and we can finally kill the password once and for all. And I think that's actually one of the more interesting things that gets me very excited about this technology.
Yeah, we got a question. Come on. Come on up.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
How's it going? This is James from Bitcoin Milwaukee. How much of your software and hardware that you make is open source? Why?
Yeah, so essentially, we build client SDKs in every language. We've got Java, Python, Ruby, and Node so far, and we're building more. All of that stuff is totally open source, so it's extremely transparent in terms of the client signing operations, everything like that. You can review the code. Very little of our platform is closed source, but we do, at least for the moment, keep it closed on our server-side signing. I think that you know, if we establish a big enough network effect and we feel comfortable in our position, then maybe we'll consider open sourcing it. But you know, you always have to make this trade-off, I think, as a startup company, of how much you want to open up and how much you want to keep closed, and it is a balancing act. I mean, ideally, we would like to be able to be 100% totally transparent about everything that we do and open source everything. But there are business considerations there too.
The hardware wallets are closed source?
But no, we're on mute. Go ahead.
The hardware wallets are closed source?
On our hardware security modules?
Yeah.
Not yet. I would like to do that. It's something we would really like to do. We are doing independent security audits, line by line code reviews. So it's not just us about these solutions. But I do recognize that when you talk about that security code, it's much better to have it sourced. Just like I said, it's always a trade-off. So I think eventually.
Micah, I got a fun little question for you. If we could fast forward about 20 years, what is the most fun, ridiculous use of the blockchain technology you could think of using in an everyday scenario?
Well, it might not be the blockchain, but
yeah, the authentication that you were speaking of.
Yeah, I think, you know, when I think about entities and authentication, I think beyond people. So to me, an entity is any identity, and an identity could be an object. I really think, like, it's very possible that in the next 10 years we will have we'll have the self-driving car, and rather than calling up Uber and going through a centralized service to basically pair myself with a driver who's going to drive me from point to point, that I will be basically calling on a network of autonomous self-driving cars that each have their own wallets and their own identity. And it will be on a distributed network that's operating on a blockchain that essentially just pairs me with a car automatically. There's no human intervention in between. I want to get from point A to point B physically. I push a button on my phone, sends a message, broadcasts it out to the blockchain. An autonomous self-driving car responds to that message, claims my claims me as their passenger, and then I pay them directly in Bitcoin and top up their account. That car can now take me from point to point. When it runs out of juice or needs to get upgraded or it needs to charge, it will basically use the exact wallet that I paid it with to pay for its own service and maintenance. And so there really needs to be no human intervention whatsoever. Now that can have really positive effects for the world, but it can also have very negative effects. I mean, if you start thinking about Skynet and drones that are weaponized, so we have to find a way to sort of balance those two things. But ultimately, the technology will allow for this. That's a guarantee. I actually think we're going to see applications of it probably from the military first before we see it in civilian life.
Right.
That was pretty cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dan, do you have a question? Great. Dan Maggie up to this plate.
Hey, Micah.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Are you familiar with the Adept project from IBM?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a couple of their demos they showed at CES.
One of the aspects of that is telehash. That's done by Jeremy Miller. He's a member of our meetup.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And he's going to present probably within the next month or two. So.
That's exciting.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, it was basically telehash, Ethereum, and what else was it?
Tor.
Tor, right.
Yeah, that's their game plan. I wanted to ask you, could you fill us in on DevCore? What was that like, and what were the events, and what sort of information did they go over?
It was good. It was it was in Boston, so Jeremy Allaire and Circle were all there. They had quite a presence there, which is good to see them out. For me, the most interesting thing actually was I finally got to meet Gavin Andreessen, and then ended up hanging out the next night in New York at dinner with him as well. So I think it's nice to be like connected to the core guys because we're so often our silos developing. We basically take the protocol and then we go and we build all this other stuff. And you start to realize that there's actually the work that they're doing is extremely important. And so, the Bitcoin Foundation has been getting a lot of flack. They put that event on. And I think that a lot of it's a little bit unfounded because they really are essentially, they're basically supporting the core developers who are actually, trying to innovate and build on the core protocol. And we really need that. The entire industry needs that. When that development slows down or they can't address problems in a quick and efficient manner, that actually affects our business. And so I guess it was nice to sort of have a renewed appreciation for what the Bitcoin Foundation is actually doing and sort of ignore all the Reddit comments and talk to them in person.
Micah, that's great. Could you give me a rundown on what sort of other companies were there with core development programs or projects or APIs, training?
Well, I don't know that so blockchain was there talking about their API a little bit and doing some sort of test projects, like little quick hacks that you can build on top of the blockchain API. But I feel like most people are pretty familiar with that API, so it wasn't like very new stuff. One thing that I was really excited about though is there's a group called the Cryptocurrency Certification Consortium, or C4, and they're doing a lot of really interesting things that I think is absolutely necessary for the industry. So one of them is more simple. They're basically creating a certified Bitcoin professional program, which allows basically anybody to go and get certified on pretty fundamental Bitcoin knowledge, so that if you're looking for a job, like for us, it can be a really good screening tool for candidates. I'm one of the first certified Bitcoin professionals. Got my certificate. But what they're also doing, they're doing 3 different things. So that's the lowest level. The second level is that they're doing more of like a certified Bitcoin developer program, which is much, much harder. That requires knowledge about like how many bytes are in a block header and things that actually I had to look up. I'd have to study before I take that exam. And then And then the third thing I think is the most interesting, which is they're creating essentially a certification for companies to assess independently what their security practices are, and it's based on a three-level system. So there's level 1, level 2, and level 3, and you sort of step your way up based on how much you're doing in terms of security. And it's very broad in scope. So it goes from everything from like the technology side of the business to policies and procedures, and what are your like what do you do if there's a catastrophic failure in the system or somebody dies, or like do you have a succession plan? So there's a lot of stuff that goes into building out a very robust security policy for a company. And the problem is that everybody so far has basically been claiming, yeah, we're enterprise grade security, bank level security, but what does that actually mean, right? It doesn't mean anything. It's a bunch of marketing terms. And so when you're trying to compare one company against another, it's very, very difficult to make a determination of who's better. At least now we have a framework that everybody can sort of recognize.
Real quickly, so they have all this information put together. Is it going to be like testing like they have for like A+ certification network and hardware, or is it going to be actual training, manuals, something you can do online, or books? How do they envision doing this?
Yes, for the 2 certification programs they have, those are online. And for the Certified Bitcoin Professional one, 75 multiple choice questions, multiple choice true false. I got 72 out of 75. I missed 3, but so that one's very simple. You can basically, anybody can do this online. Then they have the more in-depth like developer version, which they are running like boot camps and stuff to get people up to speed. I think I would imagine that they start doing some classes and boot camps, but right now they're really just focused on the certification program. And then on the security side, that's a much more in-depth process. So that requires them to sort of come into your company and evaluate your procedures and policies and everything like that, and then they'll come up with a determination of whether you're level 1, level 2, level 3. And the criteria for those levels is being essentially crowdsourced by Bitcoin companies. So guys like us and guys like BitGo and different companies who really are focused on security in the space are helping to put those criteria together.
Well, I don't know if you know the powers that be, but we would be happy to host those levels 2 and 3 at any time, I think, around here, and put together a program, whether it was a short-term or long-term process to do the training.
I can definitely make introductions to them. It's a couple guys, Michael Kirkland. So I can definitely make that introduction, no problem. I mean, they'd be ecstatic to have more people looking at this. Like they're very excited about this, and they've been working on it for a long time. So they just announced it at DevCore, and they're really, really hoping people start to actually, like, they don't want to be the only guys doing this. They want to have it more crowdsourced.
Well, actually, we have one of Michael Perklin's partners on that, I think, or one of their guys that is a consultant is a guy named what's his name? Charles Hoskinson. And he actually spoke at our meetup here recently, and he's really big on the education thing. So, I think we'd love to have more education, particularly if it was something was formalized. So we're all behind all of that. Anything we can do to get programs, projects, plans out, and we're totally behind that.
Yeah.
I'm speaking for everybody.
I mean, it's super important. I think, like, especially as this industry grows, it becomes really hard to. Yeah, thank you. It becomes really hard to sort of separate the wheat from the chaff. I think, like, we face this problem all the time because, GEM is basically, like, all we do is we focus on security, and we go really, really deep in terms of not just multisig, but our entire rules enforcement engine, and then we go all the way down to the hardware layer and make sure that all of our keys are generated in FIPS certified, RNGs, and that the keys are derived inside of the walls of the HSM, and then they never leave. So, like, we're doing things that I don't think anybody in the industry is doing, but at the same time, it's very hard for people to really understand what one company's security is versus another because they all use the same marketing terms. And so I think it's really helpful to us, because we are going above and beyond. I also think it's going to have a strong motivating effect for companies who are not necessarily living up to the security standards that should be expected of them. Because if you can't even make it onto the level 1 scale, then all of a sudden now you're an inferior product, and so now you have to compete on security, which you've never had to do before.
Cool. Cool. Do we have any more questions?
Sweet. Well, Micah, on behalf of the Bitcoin Center, I appreciate you coming out and talking to us, giving us your thoughts overall what's going on and what you guys have going on at GEM, which is really, really neat stuff. I'm excited to see more uses that come out. And yeah, let us know when you guys get more implementations out there. I'd love to see more examples of your work.
Yeah, sure.
What are the best ways for people seeing this video or the rest of our audience to be able to get in contact with you or the company?
Yeah, email me anytime. Micah, M-I-C-A-H, at gem.co. Micah@gem.co. We're very accessible here, so give us a shout.
Great. Well, I think we're done for this evening, and thank you. So,
guys,
a small little clap. So
I really appreciate the opportunity.
Great, awesome. All right, and yeah, I guess thank you very much, everybody, for who is viewing this. We're out.
All right, thanks, guys.